Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Monday Night Must See TV with the Hudson Valley Squares. We've got in the house tonight Lynn Versace, Steve Keeler, Sydney Taylor in our center square, Butch Jones, Ryan Scow, Chris Allo. Of course, I am Pete Pardo. Tonight, we are going to take a look at some of our, I don't know if I want to say favorite bands, but bands who we feel their best album might just be that classic live album that they have. So they got a strong studio catalog, but that live album just kind of is their best album that we feel, right? In addition to that, as yesterday was 11 years that we lost Ronnie James Dio. So I've asked everybody to give their favorite Ronnie James Dio memory. Could be a time you saw him live. Maybe you had a chance to meet him. Maybe it was a special time you heard some of his music for the first time. Whatever that special memory of Ronnie James Dio is, everybody's going to do a little show and tell. So we're going to start with Lynn. We're going to go Lynn, Butch, Sydney, Steve, Chris, Ryan, and myself. So Lynn, kick us off with your live albums that you think are the best albums from these three bands.
Okay. So again, I don't know that they're the best albums ever from these three, but they're my favorite albums from these three bands. So let's put it that way. So number one, I'm starting off with Peter Frampton. Frampton Comes Alive, because fucking Peter Frampton, that's why. And I love Peter Frampton. It's funny, my dad was actually his mailman back in the day.
Wow.
Growing up. So
Really?
I thought it was kind of cool. Yeah, it was kind of cool. Yeah, but Frampton Comes Alive in 1976. And the funny thing is when my sister went off to college, because let's face it, I was only 5 or 4 when that album came out. No, 5, I'm lying. She left for college, left a bunch of her records here, and I actually swiped it from her. I still have it. So that's my number one pick. I mean, Show Me the Way, Do You Feel Like I Do? And Baby, I Love Your Way. All 3 top 15, the Billboard 100, and who doesn't love Peter Frampton, For me anyway. And maybe you don't love him, but either way, that's my number one. My number 2 is Judas Priest, Unleashed in the East. 1979. It was recorded over 2 days in Tokyo. And then you get the Japanese version, you get the bonus tracks. I fucking love that album from start to finish. That, Exciter, Running Wild, it blows your mind. So for me, that's my number 2. And my number 3, because you guys know I love Johnny Cash, live at Folsom Prison. He also did a show that he recorded at San Quentin also. But I love that. I remember my dad turning me on to that and listening to it when I was a kid. So for me, that's my favorite Johnny Cash record. Did he record probably, it was 81, I think we said last time, records that are pretty fucking amazing? Yeah, he did. But for me, that's my favorite memory because let's face it, when you're listening to a record with your dad, when you're a little girl and he turns you on to that, Sydney, maybe you get it,
Oh, I sure do. It's special.
Yeah, it's really special. So that for me is Johnny Cash is my number 3. And honorable mentions, Cheap Trick at the Boudicon, because fucking A, that's killer. I wanted to say Kiss Alive, but yeah, I can't because I don't know. People, well, there's talk that maybe it's how much of it's really live. So I don't know. Again, growing up, that was my favorite.
Doesn't
Again,
matter. It counts.
Does it count? Okay, because
Counts.
that was another record I stole from my sister. Along with her, she had a really cool Kiss necklace. I wish I had it on me. It's somewhere here in this room. And again, I stole that from the 70s. I still have that from her. I stole it. And Bob Seger, Live Bullet, Turn the Page was one of my favorite songs still to this day. And Sam Cooke, live at Harlem Square Club, because that's how I got my R&B feels. Sam Cooke's great, and I love some R&B. So those are my honorable mentions. And my story of Ronnie James Dio, I've said it before, working at the Mid-Hudson Civic Center. I was a couple times, and one time I went downstairs backstage and I asked him, how does it feel being like, this rock and roll icon? He's so legendary and you're this little guy. And I said, does it bother you? And he said, oh, no. And, just kind of made me feel good. He's like, you make sure that you're the one that's on top of the world. You blow them away. You be the big voice in the room. You be that person and let them, almost like let them feel like crap that you're on top, that you're the one in the lead, that you're Like, you be the one in charge. So, he was just a great guy. He was really nice. It made me feel good. I'm just pissed that there wasn't cell phones back then because nothing was documented, but at least it was a nice memory for me.
Maybe that's for the better sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes, but again, to have a
Keep it
picture
up
of Ronnie
here.
James Dio would have been fucking amazing,
Oh, yeah.
would have been
Yeah.
amazing.
Yep.
But either way, love you, Ronnie.
Very cool. All right, Butch, what do you got?
So I guess the whole idea of this is supposed to be a live album that you think is the quintessential of that band's career. All right. So taking that, and so this isn't some of these actually are some of my favorite albums. Actually, yeah, basically. But that's the whole premise of this. So Pat Travers, live Go For What You Know. I have everything Pat Travers did before this album and after this album. But very good, Ryan. That a boy. But of course, it's got Pat fucking Thrall on it, and there you go. I figured you would have it, Pete, too. And Pat Thrall and Tommy Aldridge and Morris Cowling, one of my top 3 bass players of all time. But this is just the album. I have all the studio stuff, but this has got the best stuff on it. If you want to listen to Travers, all you really need to do is just listen to this record. So to me, that has to be included. This one might be a surprise to people, but again, going by what the premise of the show is, this shouldn't. Ufo Strangers in the Night.
That's the first album I thought of.
Of course.
Yeah.
This is where I came in 1979 when I was 12. So for me, this is all I had for a long time. And as I started to go backwards and get some of the studio stuff that, made this record, it never said, and not that I didn't like it, but the production wasn't great. So when you hear the stuff come alive, and that's what the 70s live albums are all about, the studio songs that were good, but live, they took a whole nother life. And God damn if this doesn't do it. So Ufo Strangers Tonight. I'm going to break off a little bit and do this a little different. This is the Loophole album. So this will be, I guess, a 1B or a 3B, however you want to look at it. Because they only made one album and it's live. So
Yeah.
Oh my
HSAS
God.
with Neil Schon and that guy that was in that, and Van Halen, and ruin them. But this record is just tremendous. It was recorded live. I think they went back and touched up the vocals and stuff like that. But if anyone remembers the MTV concert of this, and it's on YouTube, and I have actually, they recorded over 2 shows, and I've got both the shows bootlegs, which were phenomenal, which with more songs than was just on this. And anybody, I've talked about Neil Schon for forever, since I was a kid. Anyone that doesn't understand the magnitude of guitar playing of Neil Schon, if all you know is Journey and you're not a Journey fan and you don't know the earlier Journey before they really got pop and everything, you just please do yourself a favor and listen to that record. It is as metal as Neil Schon is ever going to get, and just destroys. So that record is phenomenal. And like Lynn said, I mean, honestly, for me, and this is my original copy that I got, that my mother wrote my name on, from November 7th, 1976.
Wow.
So I was 9 years old. Because this is the album. His studio stuff did nothing.
Yeah.
He was in a Humble Pie, left Humble Pie, put these studio records out. No one gave a shit. He put this album out, and there you go. So
That was, I agree, Butch. That was the album that if people had a Frampton album, they had one album, that was the one they had.
That was
absolutely.
it. That was it. Everybody had that record.
And so many people never bought another one of his albums.
And I'm one of them.
Yeah.
one of them too.
Yeah.
I've got the vinyl and I've got it on CD.
Sure.
So I've only got one, but this is beautiful. That record is great. And
So that's number 4. Would you pick 5?
no, I picked 3, but I threw the Neil Schon HSAS in there just because.
You didn't pick Lizzie?
No, because Lizzie's studio stuff is phenomenal.
All right.
I could listen. I love Live and Dangerous. I definitely think it's one of the greatest live albums. For me, it's tied for a 4-place 4-way
Okay.
tie. But for Lizzie, I don't ever need to hear Live and
I
Dangerous
just shocked you
ever.
didn't pick it.
No, because I don't need to hear it. That's not one of those albums. All these other albums are quintessential live records.
Yeah.
That I don't need to listen to any of their studio stuff. I could just listen to that, and that's all I need. Lizzie, honestly, I very, very, very rarely go to Live and Dangerous. I listen to the studio stuff.
Okay, that
But
makes
honestly,
sense.
Fair point. Yeah, I get it.
I don't like the guitar
That makes
tones.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like the guitar tones on Live and Dangerous, honestly.
Yeah.
It's weird, but yeah, for me, I listen to that studio stuff. That's all I need.
Cool.
Got it.
Oh, and Dio, I'm sorry. In 1994, I was working for Z-Rock and radio, old satellite that became Sirius XM for people that don't know. The guy Lee Abrams is the guy that started Z-Rock, and he shut down Z-Rock to start Sirius.
Wow.
In 94, Ronnie James Dio was playing at the Chance in Poughkeepsie, New York, and I was hosting the show because I was working for the station and everything. Show was over, and I was going out the back, and I wanted to see Ronnie, and he happened to be outside signing autographs for some kids and everything. So I saw him signing, and I wanted to stop and talk to him, but I saw him signing an autograph. So I'm like, oh, hey, Ronnie, Z-Rock just wanted to say, he's like, no, wait. He finished signing an autograph, and he comes over to me, and I said, listen, I just want to say thank you for Rainbow Rising. And he looks at me, and it's like, everybody says that to me, but that's not my favorite Rainbow record. It's like the first one, Blackmore's Rainbow, is my favorite Rainbow album. It's like that album had magic. It was very organic the way it came together.
Yeah.
The guys from Elf and Blackmore and everything. And he goes to me, he goes, well, why do you love Rainbow Rising? And I was not expecting Ronnie James Dio to turn to me and ask me that fucking question.
Put you on the spot.
I was like,
You're like
oh,
not
right.
prepared.
So this is where it came from. This is the drinking song thing, the drinking game thing. I looked at him and said, Cozy fucking Powell. And he looked at me and he smiled.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, no. And he smiled at
You're
me and
wrong.
he goes, now remember, this is 1994. He smiled at me and said, listen, it's like, no one knows this yet, but I've been talking to Cozy. Me, Cozy, and Blackmore have been talking about getting Rainbow back together. 94.
No.
He said, but I told Blackmore I would not do it if Cozy's not involved. I'm only going to do it if Cozy's involved. And then Cozy died, 5 years later, 99, I think, or 2000, but whatever it is,
98?
somewhere, it was late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere around there. So regardless, it never happened, but it was really cool for him to actually give me that little nugget to tell me that they had been talking about doing it and he was never going to do it if Cozy wasn't involved. And I thought that was fabulous. That's my Ronnie story.
Nice.
Very cool.
Cool.
Sydney, you're up.
All right, cool. So I know Butch included this first one in his last one, but I'm keeping it in because this album's really special to me. And that is, of course, Ufo Strangers in the Night. I remember being very young and hearing, funny enough, the studio version of Doctor Doctor. And it's funny, Lynn, that you mentioned, getting, sharing an album with like your dad, because Doctor Doctor is like my dad and I's like song. Like when I get married, we're gonna dance to Doctor Doctor.
That's awesome.
Like that's like our like song. So I remember hearing that. I remember when I was really young and I asked my dad, I was like, what song is this? He was like, it's Doctor Doctor by UFO. And I went through my life, and eventually when I was getting into rock, I heard that live album, and kind of like Butch was saying, it just blew all of the studio recordings, for me at least, out of the water. I mean, Love to Love on that album is like one of my favorite songs ever.
Magic.
That live version. It's insane. And when I interviewed Michael Schenker, I kind of like geeked out a little bit, like behind the scenes about like, I was like, can't believe you played on that album. But I love that album. And to me, to be honest, is probably my number one live album that has ever been. It's just, I don't think it gets better than that in my opinion. So I know
As
Butch
voted
mentioned-
by the viewers of Sea of Tranquility as the favorite live album of all time in our classic live album war last year for a reason.
Wow. Well, I mean,
Nice.
I couldn't leave it off my list. I knew that other people were going to have it, but I was like, I can't. This is a non-trading one.
Well, you know what? I mean, that's good. Sid is awesome because it should be there. I mean, there's a reason that Chrysalis Records 40 years later makes a box set of
Still of it,
right.
yeah.
of all the shows that made up that record. So absolutely, that's awesome.
It's just the sound is there, just the atmosphere. Like it's just I listened to it a lot also last year during like quarantine because we couldn't go to shows. And it was like one of those albums that I could listen to and it felt like I was really at a show.
Yep.
So I had to put that one on my list. So that's my first pick. My second pick is kind of me cheating. But I was having a little bit of a hard time and I was like, you know what, I'm going to pick this because it's hard. I wouldn't say, this is how I'm cheating a little bit. I wouldn't say it's maybe better than all of their releases, but it was very influential for that time. And I'm going to go with Tesla's 5-Man acoustical jam because that led into the whole MTV Unplugged thing that took over. I love that album. I know maybe for some it's not maybe a quintessential live album, but that was like not a lot of people were doing acoustic stuff like that, and I really feel like that influenced an entire kind of Kiss going in and doing Unplugged and all of these kind of Unplugged specials that happened afterwards, and that was recorded at the Troc here in Philly, and I also kind of have a special connection to that because I now live in Philly, as many of you know, so to kind of hear that live album and walk past that venue, which is sadly closed now, but I went to that venue and would walk past all the time and it was just really cool. So put that one on my list. It's a little bit of a cheater because there might be some Tesla albums. There are Tesla albums that I love more than that one, but I had to put that on the list because it's also Tesla and I love that type of music. So that's my second one. And my third one is one of Lynn's honorable mentions, and that is Cheap Trick live at Boudicon. I heard that album when I was very, very young. And when I saw Cheap Trick back in 2019, I found that was the first time I saw Cheap Trick, and to hear him say, "I want you to want me" in like real life was like, oh my God, that's like the coolest shit ever. I was like, I can't believe I'm actually hearing Robin Zander say that in like real life, like real time. But I love Cheap Trick studio records. But I just, again, kind of like UFO, I feel like that album just captures just a moment in time and just a period of that time in music, and it's just, if I had to have one Cheap Trick album, it would be Live at Boudicon. So
yeah, agree.
That's those are my three. And for my Dio story, this is a story that's so special to me. And I told this to Vinny Appice when I had him on my podcast. But as many of you know, as I've said on Sea Tranquility before, I never got to see Dio live, unfortunately, which tears me up inside because I grew up from like all these bands when I was very small listening to Dio's music. So back in 2019, it was actually this weekend, which is really weird that it was 2 years ago this weekend, that it happened during this time too. It was very strange. I went to the Sonic Temple Festival in Ohio, and really cool festival. It's like Danny Wimmer Festival. He puts on these really big 3-day things, and Killswitch Engage was playing one slot. And as many of you know, they do the Holy Diver cover. They've done this cover for years. And, I've never seen Killswitch Engage, and it was during the day and there wasn't really like a lot of other bands that I wanted to see. So I was like, I'm going to watch Killswitch. And it was cool. They're crowd surfing, all this fun stuff. And they get to the end of the set, and of course they're going to finish with Holy Diver, right? So they're right about that point in the set. And it's the sunniest day that you can possibly imagine. Not a cloud in the sky, literally nothing. So watching the band, I feel like 2 drops hit my shoulder. And I'm like, okay, like, people are crowd surfing. I thought that it was like somebody spilled a beer, it's 60,000 people at a festival. I mean, the odds of that happening are not, out of the realm of possibility. So I thought somebody spilled beer, and I was like, whatever. And so watching the show, and I look up in the sky, and there is a rainbow stretching across the clear blue sky. And they literally were starting Holy Diver when the rainbow went across the sky. And it didn't rain. Those 2 drops that I felt were the only drops that I felt. There was no rain, there was no nothing. And I'm pretty sure it was the day that Ronnie had passed away. It was like the anniversary of that. Wow. So it would have been 9 years. And I watched Killswitch Engage do that song, and I literally cried. It was like a very, and they pointed out the rainbow, and it was just like I never got to see him and I never got to meet him, but it felt like I got to like meet his soul there for a second through that, like, whatever. I don't know if you guys believe in that or anybody watching.
I do.
That.
I do.
I like just the coincidence of having their No
Yeah.
Vivo Rain, and they're about to play that song.
Yeah, that's
and just
badass.
a rain. It was just one of the most magical moments ever. So
I
that's
love
a
it.
story. Like I said, it tears me up every day that I never got to see him, but I love him very, very much. So there you go.
Awesome.
Amen. Love it.
Great story. All right, Steve.
So I didn't want to interrupt Sydney, but as we got talking about Cheap Trick Boudicon, that was another from someone that was alive in that era and was listening to this stuff with me. And Frampton Comes Alive, a lot of people, that was the live album. That's the album you had from Frampton. Same thing with Cheap Trick. A lot of people just had Boudicon. One of my best friends would drive around in his, whatever he drove at the time, souped up car, whatever it was. And every time you'd go with him, you were guaranteed just to hear that album and nothing else. He would just play Boudicon, him and his girlfriend. But that's definitely a great representative for an album from what we're talking about tonight. I had a tough time with this a little bit. I knew everybody was going to pick Priest because I feel that could be their best album.
I think I'm the only one who
He's
picked
the only
it.
one.
I purposely didn't pick it. That's all everybody was.
I would think that everyone would have picked it, but
remember the whole.
I pulled it, but I figured someone was going to mention it.
But Steve, remember the whole idea of this is like the live album is the album that you would listen to over everything, all the other studio stuff.
I know.
Well,
And
so Priest, we all love that record, but
Yeah,
Unleashed-
cheated, sorry.
it's pretty close though. It's pretty close to being.
so
that
what'd you
one.
pick?
Oh, I'm gonna pick. When I think of live albums and I think of things that I listened to back then a lot, I'm going with Allman Brothers from Fillmore East. When I'm thinking of bands that you want to hear them live more than you want to hear standard, I'm thinking of jam bands more than I'm thinking of anything else. I mentioned Kiss Alive, of course, as a
Favorite. There it goes.
I'm going with Grateful Dead, Europe 72 for my second pick.
Is that the one with the ice cream cone cover?
Yes.
God, I feel
Awesome.
so bad for Pete because you just get to the end and everybody takes everything that you have.
That's why I have a whole stack here.
He's like pulling him out. I'm like, oh man.
I come prepared because I knew that's okay.
That wouldn't be
had
in my
like 10
stack.
choices here. I was like, that's all right.
And I've got a couple here. I got to pick my third one. It could be, I'm doing a tie. I'm doing Queen Live Killers and Lynyrd Skynyrd One More from the Road.
Oh, good one. Yeah.
Because those are ones that in that time period, I didn't have any of the studio albums, but some of those records. Another one I'll mention before I hop off to the Dio story, Deep Purple Made in Japan. That was one album eight track that I had back then and we just wore out.
Wow.
Yeah, but let me ask you a question though. So back to what I was saying. So just like taking Deep Purple, if you're in a Deep Purple mood and you're going through your records, CDs, whatever, that's the record you're picking out. You're not picking anything else out. That's your go-to album is Made in Japan.
That is up there though.
Because that's what the question is. The question isn't the greatest live albums of our time.
Yeah, but that's up to interpretation for each of
It
us.
is up to interpretation, but yeah, you know what? Yeah, it might be that one, but
Okay.
other than Machine Head, because it has everything you want to hear on it, and it's what I listened to back then. That's so much I kind of went with on this, and my Dio story is quite similar to Butch. I think Butch was was there that night when I met Ronnie. I was one of those kids he referred to as getting an autograph out back, I think. That was Strange Highways tour, right, Butch? Yep, and that's where I got to meet him out. I still have my picture with me and Ronnie that was taken behind the chance.
Yep.
The Dio moment, I would say my memorable one was going to see them on the Black and Blue tour at Lebanon Valley Speedway in upstate New York, which was an event. That's for sure. Cars getting burned up, people died, Hell's Angels for security. It was one of those old 70s going into the 80s festival type things with Blue Sickle. So I guess that's pretty much all I've got to add to this episode tonight. Thanks, guys, for having me on.
If I remember correctly, Steve, you had that wonderful mustache back in like the mid 90s, right?
That was not mid '90s. That was early.
Is that
80s.
early? That was the 80s? Oh man.
That was like when the picture you're thinking of is when I was hanging out with Mustaine at Rock and Roll Heaven North.
Oh, but I used to come to the store. You always
Yes,
had that.
that's
You
right.
had that mustache way early on.
That was in the very early
That's
days.
funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Classic Keeler stash.
Well, I was gonna say, if I remember the picture right, I used to bust Steve's chops because it wasn't a bad thing, but he did look in the
Like a
in the-
perv? Like a perv.
Like he belonged in Black Sabbath.
well, no, I was gonna say in the early '90s, Steve to me used to look a little bit like Bruce Dickinson. So
Oh.
I remember
Like
looking at the
a-
picture, being like, "Oh, that's so cool, Steve. You have a picture of Bruce Dickinson and Ronnie James Dio."
And see, Len, not a perv, Ronnie.
I
James.
know. I was well because they said
Not
like
a
weird
perv.
mustache, so I was like, oh,
I
was
thought
he
I
like?
was looking like Ron Jeremy or something.
That's what I was thinking. Sorry, my mind's always in the gutter. I don't know. what
That
to
was
tell
in
you.
the '80s, the mustache. Then I had the dyed black hair and
Yeah, I think your hair was darker, right?
trying to be more of a rock and roll guy. Then I dye my hair black and trying to look like.
Nice.
Although I'm not one to talk because I had a mustache back in the 80s too. So, whatever.
Well, all right.
It was
I
always
don't
a
know.
lot fuller than mine. So,
I see the hand. They're coming back. Maybe. That's right. Chris Allen's got a little mustache going there, don't you?
Yeah, I'm just lazy.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like, he doesn't
Nothing's
have a
coming back.
mustache.
Yeah,
He'll shave if he's going out.
yeah,
Maybe.
maybe. Who knows? Maybe I'll bathe too. Maybe.
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 That's gonna make it on the highlights. Or no.
there you go.
Maybe Chris will bathe. That'll be on the list number 27.
We'll be basking in the ambiance.
There you go. All right, Chris. Speaking of Chris, you're up.
Okay, cool. I always like this one. It was kind of a tough one, but I picked what I did. I always prefer. I know I've mentioned this on Pete on other episodes. A live record. I don't care what band it is. I want it to be the whole show, whatever that tour was. And two of my picks are actually albums that I had as a kid that were the truncated versions, and the expanded ones are so much better. This first one, I think this is the fourth time I've bought this record, and hopefully this will be the last one. Pete and I talk about the curse all the time, the dreaded curse of collecting. But I love the band Alcatraz. They put out the Live Sentence record in, I think, '84, and I bought it on album and set and CD. But then I had to buy it again when they put it out as the triple disc. They retitled it Live in Japan, and it's a double CD with the Blu-ray. And man, it's so cool. It's got 3 rainbow covers, an Yngwie cover. It's got Desert Song, which is my favorite track from Assault Attack. So it's really cool to have the whole set. The other one,
What's his laughing because he has like probably 6 copies of this.
I want to know what the fuck he's laughing at.
I'm laughing
like,
because of the same thing. They released it one version, and then they released it again with the longer version. Like, but just stop releasing the same goddamn
it's true.
thing. Just,
It's like, Jesus, how many times are we going to buy the same thing? And
but they keep adding songs.
Yeah, no, it's true. And after I locked up the garage, Pete, I'm like, oh shit, I should have grabbed the other versions. I know I had Yngwie sign one of them, and I was like, oh fuck it, I'm too lazy to go back and unlock everything and start digging. But yeah, this is really good. If you're an Alcatraz fan. The other one is it was definitely capped off the band's career. This was Staying Alive from Accept. But the original version was a single disc, which I think was like 10 songs. And this is the double disc version, which has 19 songs. Really the best of Accept's, original incarnation, I guess. Other than it's got everything except Losers and Winners. I love that song. It's not on here, but other than that, man, it's really cool. And funny enough, Pete, having the curse. I was looking up laser discs not that long ago because I bought the Black and Blue on Laserdisc, even though I already have it on VHS, DVD, and 35 millimeter. But I got Black and Blue, and then I came across Accept Staying Alive, which was released only in Japan on Laserdisc. And yeah, I do have Laserdisc players, and I was like, oh shit, should I get that? But thank God I didn't, because I found this. Apparently, I picked this up in Germany on DVD, so it's got the whole Staying Alive concert video. But my
I'm gonna
last,
send you some fucking garlic because you have a curse.
well, it's terrible.
Bad curse.
Started as a kid when you get an action figure, and what does it say on the back? Collect them all.
Yeah.
And it just stuck.
Well, go back to that. Except, is there other stuff on that?
On the DVD?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
It's got the Staying Alive full show,
Yeah.
at least the video anyway, which is 12 tracks. Then it's got 7 music videos.
Oh, wow.
Then it's got 3 tracks from Live in Sofia, which was a Bulgarian TV special.
What years to say?
That's 1993.
Okay.
Then the music videos, it starts with I'm a Rebel and runs to Death Row.
I'm a Rebel's a video?
Yeah. Then there's
I know what Butch is buying.
behind the scenes, a photo gallery, a discography, a biography, and then there's 9 unreleased audio tracks.
Wow.
Stuff from Death Row, Breaker, I'm a Rebel. So it's one of those double-sided discs. So the audio's on one side and the DVD's on the other. I know I picked it up at some festival in Europe.
Very cool. Very
Thank
cool.
God I didn't buy that Laserdisc, Pete, because I was like, saved a couple bucks there. My
We
last.
all know you're gonna look for it and still buy it. So who you fooling?
Well, maybe
It'll be
it
in
could
the back
happen.
of your head. It'll
Hell,
never go away.
for all I know, I can have it. I keep meaning to go through all my Laserdiscs again, because the last time I did, I remember pulling out like a Sepultura concert on Laserdisc, which I bought at Tower Records, and I don't think I ever even opened. I'm like, holy Jesus. That's a whole other story. This last one is kind of a newer one, and I liked this band with the first singer. I liked them with the second singer, but it was only a like thing. But I loved them when they got the third singer, and it's
Awesome.
the album's Nightwish, Showtime, Storytime.
Yes.
Floor Jansen is just she brings a real rock sensibility and an edge that the other 2 girls didn't. It was just kind of too fluffy for me. I liked them, but that was as much as I would go with them.
Yeah, you don't like the fluffer.
No.
Floor is such a powerful front.
Yeah. I mean, she's awesome. Even though I hate that new record, I'm still gonna go. I still bought it, even though I know it sucked, and I'm still gonna go see them live. Even though they're probably gonna play like half that new record, I'm gonna hate it. But all right. So real quick, my Ronnie James Dio story. I'm not pulling a Butch and rubbing this into me, but I feel very fortunate that I was able to see him almost 40 times with Dio, Sabbath, and I seen him once with Ian Gillan, the Ian Gillan solo band. I was able to interview him several times. Some of them were in person and some of them were phoners. And you guys know, if you've done in-person interviews, it's always a pain in the ass. Like something's always going wrong and you're just fucking waiting around. And the last in-person interview I did with Ronnie James Dio was in 2004. He'd just come over to do, they were kicking off the Master of the Moon tour in fall of 2004. And he had one day that he was doing press in the city, and then he was starting the tour that night. So I came down to do the in-person interview, and something got screwed up. So I just had to wait around for a while. I was like in the green room, just waiting to interview Ronnie. And, I didn't want to go anywhere, and I had to pee, but I held it, I squelched it. And so finally, and I was the last one of the day. And I was like, and I was going to see the Dio concert that night. I believe it was in Hartford, but I was in the city. So I was like, oh, fuck, man, I got to drive an hour and a half back home, pick up my buddy, and then drive an hour and a half at least up to Hartford to see the fucking show. Like, it didn't matter for Ronnie because he wasn't going on to like 10, but I wanted to see all the bands. And anyway, they finally call me in. I sit down with him. He was awesome, super cool. I asked him a lot of Rainbow and Sabbath questions, asked him about the reunion.
I bet you he walked in and apologized to you.
I cannot remember that part, but you are probably right. He was that kind of guy.
Yep.
He was awesome. I mean, I remember telling him specifically how my dad was a Dio fan, and my dad took me to the first couple Dio concerts, and my dad had passed away, and he was like awesome. Like I would never say that to any other rock star guy, but he was the kind of guy you could talk to. He was so nice, so personable.
Yeah.
And asked him a whole bunch of shit. And I did my 30 minutes or maybe a little bit longer. And I was like, all right, Ronnie, thanks so much. See you at the gig tonight. And I run out of there and I run into the bathroom and I throw my stuff on the sink. And I remember there was 2 urinals. Like when you walked in, there was the real short urinal, which I guess is for kids or for, people handicapped in a wheelchair or whatever. And the regular one. So I run over to the regular one, and I'm peeing, and like 30 seconds later, door opens up, and it's Ronnie James Dio, and he's like, "Fancy seeing you here." So he
Tell
walks.
me you pissed with Ronnie James Dio.
Oh yeah. So he walks.
That's fucking amazing.
He walks right up to the little short urinal, but because Ronnie's so short, I mean, I'm not a giant. I'm 5'10", but because Ronnie's like, I don't know, he looked like he was like.
He's my height.
He's like short.
5'3".
He fit perfect. So I'm sitting there and he's like talking to me and he's like, yeah, so I'm going to see you tonight, right? He's like, you going straight to the gig? And we're talking. I'm like, I got to go home first and pick up my buddy. And I just remember thinking, wow, like if, 15-year-old me was told that 35-year-old me is going to be standing 6 inches from Ronnie James Dio, and we're both going to have our dicks out at the same time, like I never would have believed it. But it's a true story, and he was super cool, and I mean, I still made the show, and he was an awesome guy.
Great.
And I don't think he looked. I know I didn't look.
Did you look at it? You didn't look at it?
I didn't look. I love the guy. I didn't want to know. Hopefully, it was a monster.
That sucks. I hope it was a monster.
Oh yeah, true story.
That's great. Piston with Ronnie James Dio.
Yeah.
I wish I was there.
Well, listen, I wish we had our dicks out with groupies and stuff. That would have made the story awesome. But, the bathroom thing, I'll take it.
35-year-old you, Pierce 15-year-old you. All right, listen, kid, 20 years in the future.
Right.
That's great. That's fucking great. I love it.
Well, Mr. Bangles, you got that's a hard act to follow. What do you got?
Yeah, sure is.
My Dio story does not involve any of that. But,
his dick wasn't out.
No, my dick was not out for any. So I kind of thought about this like Butch thought of it. Like when you pick this album, it's the album you want to listen to, like to the exclusion
That's
of
what
everything
the question
else.
was.
So the
The
first
question
one,
was,
Well, I have to be in a mood to listen to a live album, so.
it does. Now the first album that came to mind was UFO. I do like the studio stuff. That live album is so much, I think, superior. But I don't want to pick that because I figured everybody else did. But the second one did, and I didn't know if anybody would pick this, but to me, it's this guy, 1970, The Who Live at Leeds.
Glad Nick's not here.
And the reason is, the reason is, The Who always had this reputation for being this insane live band, destroying the shit out of their equipment, smashing guitars, smashing drums, being fucking maniacs. And I like the studio stuff, but the studio stuff does not capture that. And for years, I was always like, when I was younger, I'm like, is this the same band? Like the studio stuff is good. It's enjoyable classic rock, but it's not like this. They don't sound like fucking maniacs. And I just never could like kind of reconcile the two until somebody said to me, "Oh, you got to check out this live album they did back in the early days." And this captures that energy. And this is like Keith Moon sounds like a fucking maniac. The band is on fire. So I like the studio stuff from The Who. I'll be honest, I don't really listen to it very often. Tommy's good, Who's Next, that's all good stuff. But when I want to listen to The Who, I pull out this guy. So that's my number one choice is Live at Leeds.
Great one. I would say if you get Live at Leeds, a deluxe version, and get The Who Live at the Isle of Wight, and they're both right from the same time period.
I ordered the deluxe version where you sent it to me because this is the 13 track one. This is the 14. This is like the basic one. It's been around forever. So I ordered that deluxe.
Well, that's long. Wait a minute, though. That's longer than the regular one.
Yeah, that was the first reissue.
Oh.
Yeah, then exactly.
Yeah, the original live album.
Yeah,
had like 7 or 8
that.
songs. I don't have that one. Yeah, this is but this isn't the one Pete was talking about. There's another one that's got like It's
Yeah,
twice as long.
the
It's just all
deluxe
kinds
has
of other.
all of Tommy, or like 90% of Tommy. That's what that's missing. Yeah.
Hey, Chris, is Alcatraz all over again?
I was just gonna say, see, Ryan's got the curse too.
So let's see now. What else I wanted to do? I like this band. Not one of my favorite bands on earth. I really just kind of like the earlier stuff when they were a little like gnarlier and heavier. And when it comes to these guys, this is usually what I listen to, and it's
Oh,
very
yeah.
creatively titled Grand Funk Live album. I like the Red album a lot. The Red album, like the bass guitar is just fucking disgusting. It's like just this gnarly, heavy tone. But on this too, it's like a really like nasty sounding album, really raw. So I usually listen to this when it comes to Grand Funk. And a lot of their later stuff after this, it got a little too soft and weird. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it. I'll be honest. But the first couple of albums of this live one, so I'm definitely going with Grand
That
Funk.
band, you know, for even for you know me, Pete, and Steve being a little older than you guys, it's still, to me, it's hard for me to fathom that band sold out Shea Stadium faster than the Beatles did.
They were
crazy.
big for a couple years. They were huge. Grand Funk.
I like the sound, but I don't hear that.
Right.
Like there's this just sounds like good, like dirty hard rock.
Right.
Like this is but yeah, you're right. They did, and they sold it out like that too.
It's
So
insane.
You know what it was? I think Grand Funk had the pulse of the people. All their songs were about anti-Vietnam War and anti-government, all that kind of stuff. And
It's
people
the first of its kind.
embraced that in a big way. And
true.
I think that they, to the kids of the day, Grand Funk was like one of them. And I think it really resonated with them quite a bit.
And you know what?
long. Like they weren't on top of the world for very long, but
Yeah,
for a little while they definitely were.
And they also had a good band opening for them on that show too. Who I forgot to mention as my honorable mention, so I'll go back to that. But I'm sorry.
And my third
Mr.
one
Bangles.
is another one that nobody picked. And I kind of thought somebody would pick this, but nope, that's this guy here.
I thought of it a little while ago. Yeah.
Great album.
This is I'm not, I like a lot of his old stuff. I'm not a huge fan of his, and I'll be honest, when I want to listen to him, I usually just pull this album out. The Nugent album. It's got all his best stuff. The guitar playing is obviously in another fucking dimension. It's got all the best stuff. And obviously they jam, they kind of like work some of the songs out, but not to excess, They kind of keep things moving along. So going
Excellent
with this.
pick.
And for honorable mentions, this is tough. I wanted to pick a like more extreme, like black metal, death metal, and that style of music is not known for live albums. It never has been. It's just not in the DNA of that stuff. So there are a lot of bootlegs. Most of them suck. Most of them are like rehearsal, like right off the recording board, very raw. But there is one very famous one. I don't know if it's their best, but I do listen to it a lot, and that's Mayhem's Live in Leipzig from 1990. The only thing they did with the singer dead before he killed himself. And obviously these guys had all kinds of shenanigans and nonsense their whole career. They didn't actually put out a studio album for 4 years after this because the guitarist was murdered by the at the time bass player, and there's very a lot of shenanigans. Yeah, they were infamous for all the nonsense.
That movie Lords of Chaos is fucking insane. If anybody watching has never seen that movie and you don't know about Mayhem, I watched that. That's how I really learned a lot about Mayhem, and I was like the entire time I was just like, what the fuck? It was crazy.
Well, I'll expand on that. They put out this album, which it's raw. It's like a rehearsal recording. It's very raw. They had the singer at the time. This guy's name was Perrin. He was clinically depressed. He was very severely depressed. He was a very good black metal vocalist, but he was very depressed. He killed himself. The guitarist came over to the rehearsal space, found the body, took a picture of it, and that picture of him and he blew his head off with a shotgun. Ended up on a bootleg of another live album.
Yeah.
So they're just that band. It's a fucking crazy.
Well, the brains too.
They carried around pieces of his skull.
Apparently,
Okay, that's disgusting. What the fuck?
Yeah, it's called Dawn of the Blackhearts.
Why
It's a
the hell
bootleg
would you
album.
listen to someone who would do that?
But you know what? He made
amazing.
because this is a good album, and he sounded great on this. And he wasn't on the studio album. It came out 4 years later, but it's kind of infamous for that reason. So that was my only pick. And
as you talk about
the last thing,
if you talk about Mayhem, Ryan, with that, a lot of people got a piece of his skull sent around to them.
Yeah, Well, Morgan from Marduk still has a piece apparently. But you know what?
Ah.
I'll go back to Folsom. My last honorable mention. I'll go back to Folsom. And again, I've listened to this. I like a lot of his studio stuff. I have a lot of his albums. I like the later stuff that Rick Rubin did. But the best thing he ever did will always be Folsom Prison. Awesome.
Thank
awesome
you.
album.
Thank
This
you.
is an original press from what the hell did this come out? 1969? Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I
69.
got that record.
So
That's
and
my
it's
dad's.
plays good too. This was a gift from one friend of mine. So yep, best thing he ever did. Obviously to play in a prison like that was just,
That's
I mean,
badass.
that doesn't happen anymore. Like that world is past. It doesn't happen anymore.
That's
But
badass.
The acoustics must be awesome.
it does. It
Does,
sounds good. The
It
band is
sounds
on
great.
fire.
James Brown did a pretty famous album in a prison years ago. I had that as a kid too.
Yeah, it's a great live album too. It's the first Cash album I ever got, first country album I ever got, and I listen to it all the time. It's iconic. So that is that. That's all I got.
Glad you
Right.
joined me.
Got a Dio story? Or you also going to read Nick's
Oh
story?
yeah, shit. Okay, yeah. So I saw Dio. I only actually saw him once because I'm an asshole. I missed the Radio City gig with Heaven and Hell, definitely because I'm an asshole. I saw him with Motorhead and Iron Maiden in 2003. But my story is 2017. I was at the last version of my friend Anik put on the little Wings of Metal festival in Montreal. It's like a little intimate festival. Had like Voivod play one year, Manila Road, Satan, like underground bands, but like kind of an old school. So the last band of the night was Voivod, best band from Montreal. They played. Everybody was drunk, hanging around, and she does. After the thing was after the show ended, you didn't just want to go home, So she would DJ for a couple hours and just play any classic metal you want to hear. So I'll play this. People were requesting stuff, and I go over. I'm like, "Can you play Heaven and Hell by Black Sabbath?" So she puts it on, and there must have been about 100 people left in there drinking beer, hanging out, bullshitting in little circles. You know what? Within 30 seconds, every motherfucker in that place was singing along to Heaven and Hell. Everybody was singing along, and there was no band playing. It was just people over the PA just hanging around, just singing the song. Because I'm like, every single person knows every word to that song because it's just that fucking good. And that was like a little magical memory because that was the end of the night. And then after that, we all left. And that was the last time she did the fest. That was 2017. So that was like perfect way just to cap it off of the 4 times she did the festival. So that just stands out in my memory a lot.
Very cool. Ryan, you have access to our messenger to read Nick's choice for his Dio memory. Did you see that?
Yes. Yeah. I went, Nick unfortunately could not be here tonight, but Nick said in 2000, well, I'll go by memory here. In 2005, he did see Dio over in a festival in Europe. And he said it was very memorable to him because he was with a couple friends. One of his friends had his wife on his shoulders, and he said, unfortunately, his friend's wife passed away from cancer a couple of years later. So that was like one of the last times they got to see each other. And just that memory of watching Dio, the sun was going down, beautiful day. I believe it was in Germany. I forget the festival. It was like one of those giant 800 billion people outdoor
Sweden
festival
Rock.
in Germany.
Sweden Rock, he said.
Rock, yeah.
Okay, so just like a million people standing around. Dio obviously would be the headliner. And so that's just, I never got to go to it. I've been to Europe for a lot of festivals, but I never did any of those giant outdoor, like super mega festivals. And of course, has been to a lot of them. So I didn't get to experience that particular vibe, but I know he was very, very touched by that, just seeing Dio's and things going down. So
Cool. All right. So some of mine got picked already. I had a feeling, I was going to pick Strangers in the Night, but I knew a couple people would probably pick it. That's definitely one of them. Well, I do like those 3 studio albums that came out before quite a bit, but yeah, the live album that's like the UFO album to have. Kiss Alive for sure.
Yeah.
Steve mentioned Allman Brothers at the Fillmore, absolutely. The Who live at Leeds, absolutely. So, and the Pat Travers, of course. So I'm going to throw a couple other ones out here for you. So I love this guy, great guitar player. I really dig his studio albums a lot, but when I'm in the mood to really listen to Frank Marino, you got to play Frank Marino Rush live.
Man.
It's just absolutely scorching.
Totally forgot that
Wish
one.
it was a double.
Yeah, if it was a double, I might have included it, but yeah.
Right. But it's still great. It's still amazing. So
But Pat Travers was single too.
I know that's
That's
another
true.
one. Should have been a double. Yeah.
It's just brilliant.
And how about that
Yeah.
Robin Trower live album? That should have
I know it. Yep.
It's only 8
Everybody
freaking
likes
songs.
the double.
Yep.
Hell.
Brilliant, Ryan, though. Woo.
It's an amazing album. It really is.
Here's one for all the Brits that watch the show. How about Status Quo live? I've got a whole bunch of Status Quo albums on CD. I got to be honest, I very rarely listen to any of them. If I want to listen to, their brand of 70s, British boogie, this is the one to listen to. Double album here. It's got all their best songs, and the songs are heavier and more kicked up on this. And for me, this is really, I've got a whole bunch of their stuff. This is really the only one I ever really needed, but that's a lot of fun.
You just said a word that just made me think of something that
exactly, and it's right here. Fog Hat.
Yep,
Live.
that's
One thing you mentioned, Fog Hat.
Right.
You said boogie. I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah, I mean, Foghat also has a lot of really solid records.
Yep.
But man, it's like that live album. If you only have
That's the one.
all you need.
Well,
That's
Steve,
the one.
that one needs to be a double, Steve.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And that Fog Hat Live is right there with Frampton, and it's right there with Boudicon and a lot of the other ones we mentioned.
And they're all around in the same 2-3 years.
And that's who everybody had. You had a Fog Hat record, you had live. I mean, you might have something else, but back in the 70s, that's the one you had. Yeah.
And a couple honorables here. Little Feat, Waiting for Columbus. Again, great band. A lot of good studio records, but man, this is the one to get. The sensational Alex Harvey Band live. That's it right there.
Wow.
Another great live record. And man, you could, any Grateful Dead live album. I just happened to pull this one. But for me, the Dead were a better live band than they were a studio band. I like a bunch of their studio records quite a bit, but for me, it's all about the live stuff. So those are my picks for today. And so deep story. I never got to meet the guy, unfortunately. One of my big regrets. I just never really had the opportunity. But I think one of my greatest memories, and I saw him live many, many times, solo with Sabbath. But I think for me, the most memorable was seeing that Radio City Music Hall show, Heaven and Hell. The first big tour when him and Geezer, Tony, and Vinny got back together, and I was there in the audience for Radio City Music Hall, and just seeing and hearing and feeling the love of all 10,000 people, however many people Radio City holds, I don't even know, feeling the love and the place just shaking with people shouting Ronnie, 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 like in between every song. And he was just, you could tell he was so touched. And for this show, I don't know, for those of you who were at that show, it was hard to get tickets for this show. So like what me and all my
really
buddies,
quick.
It sold out really quick. So what my buddies and I all decided to do, instead of trying to get all, 5 or 6 tickets all together, which was near impossible, we all bought our own single seats, and we were all sitting all over the venue, right? And during the entire show, like after every song, we would be texting each other saying, this is like the greatest night ever. I mean, because they played every song you'd want to hear. Ronnie sounded great. The guys like turned back the clock, and it was just amazing to be there. And then, now you got the Blu-ray and the live album, and it's like, I was there that night. We'll have that forever. And so that's like my story. I do want to throw one other story just to kind of reiterate how much this guy means to me. So maybe about like 4 or 5 years ago, I was at the gym one day, middle of the week. It's like noon, right? I'm doing my normal thing. I go to the gym during my lunch hour, and I decided to play Rainbow Rising. It was a cardio day, so I'm on the elliptical, and I'm listening to Rainbow Rising, and Stargazer comes on, and like maybe 3/4 of the way through that song, and for those of you who know the song really well, you know what part of the song that is. Ronnie is just doing his thing, and I literally broke down in tears on the elliptical listening to this song. And the guy who was working out next to me came over to me, goes, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm fine. I'm just listening to like an old friend right now." And it's just kind of really got me there. And ever since that day, I try not to listen to Rainbow Rising specifically, because it's probably my favorite vocal performance by him in a place where there are a lot of other people around, because it just affects me in that way. And I'd rather just be by myself listening to that, because it just gets me so emotional, because I really miss the guy. I don't know if any, and maybe some of you agree or disagree, but I don't know if any rock star that we've lost, for me anyway, has affected me quite as much as losing him.
No, for sure.
No.
Well, there's
I
been
agree
one.
with that.
Yeah, I mean, we all have that one, right? For
agree
me,
with
it's
that.
Ronnie.
Been one since him.
Gary Moore's a close second. It's just.
Pete, my dad was at that Radio City show, and he feels about it the same way that you do. Like, he talks about that. I mean, Ronnie is like his end all be all, other than like Jimmy Page. And he was at that show, and he still talks about that show like the best night of his life. So
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's been 11 years. It really is.
Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, man, I know exactly. As soon as you started going down that road, I knew where you were going about the and rising, because I've been in my car many times, and I know he's not ad-libbing, but it sounds like he's ad-libbing, which became his trademark from then forward on those big songs like that. But yeah, he gets going, and you just like, God damn.
Wait, you shed a tear?
I mean, it's just amazing. It's amazing.
I'm not even answering that one, Lynn.
But to go back to Butch's story, which I meant to mention earlier, it is interesting, right? And I'm sure the Rainbow Reunion would have had to have Cozy Powell. But the interesting thing is, all right, so we're talking like 1994, 95, and I did ask Ronnie about a possible Rainbow Reunion, and there was discussions. But the interesting thing is that Cozy Powell was in Sabbath with Ronnie. And Cozy Powell worked on the Dehumanizer record, and from everything I've read, they did not get along during those sessions. And Cozy had a horse accident and then was quickly shuffled off, and they brought Vinny Appice in. So, yeah, while I would have loved to see a Rainbow Reunion too, well, if they couldn't get along in 1992, how would they get along in 1994?
I think that they must have heard some dollar signs.
Yeah,
And that could be. That could be.
But you know what? I've never seen an interview. Well, not that you ever would either, but I've never seen an interview where there's ever been a bad word said about Cozy from Dio.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
All you ever hear is the opposite. So
Right.
I'm with you. I mean, it sounded like Cozy, as much as he's my favorite drummer of all time, it sounds like he was not the most easiest guy to work with.
Right.
He's a drummer. What the fuck?
From him being in Michael Schenker's band and him leaving after a record and being with Gary Moore, and Gary Moore telling him that, I want you to play like this. And Cozy's like, I'm fucking Cozy Powell. You don't tell me how to fucking play. And he leaves, and the White Snake thing, he's with that. He's with the other guy that I'm not mentioning because we're going to go a whole show without me mentioning his name. And he was in that band, and that didn't last. So yeah, I think Cozy knew who he was.
Right.
And just kind of milk that for all it's worth, which is sad, but yeah. That's very interesting that you bring that up for sure.
Yeah. So anyway,
Dio's
Ronnie,
Dio's wife just did a big thing for him on the date of his death. Wendy had this big celebration of his life. I saw photos of that. That was really cool.
Yeah.
And if I can, I have to say this one thing before people start beating me up on this and the thread at some point. I didn't do any honorable mentions, so I'm going to mention one, because this is really true. This actually really should have taken a place of something else, because this is a band, an album that most people will go to listen to this band. Studio records up to it were really, really good. Really, actually, they were great too. And then the record after that was great, but I still think that most people go to this one record, and that's my guy Steve Marriott with Humble Pie, because no one's mentioned it, and I have to say his name. So Humble Pie Rockin' the Fillmore is absolutely a quintessential go-to live record for a band that still had other great stuff, but everything measures up to that record.
And you can make a case for that King Biscuit live album.
And you know how I feel. That I like that better.
There are times I like it better too, because it's I think it's less jammy, right?
Yep. Yep. 100%.
The one that I'm surprised nobody mentioned, and I couldn't find mine, I was like, oh, fuck it, was No Sleep Till Hammersmith from Motorhead.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I thought
it's
of it.
in the studio stuff.
That's exactly, Ryan.
There's a couple records I would choose.
It's debatable.
Close. It's close. Right?
Yeah.
It's a great live record, though.
Motorhead did, but
Sure is.
I don't know. I love that Motorhead album. I listen to that all the
I'll go to
time.
Another Perfect Day before I go to that. So
I'll listen to that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
All that shit is good.
That's true. That's true. All right, everybody, there you have it. Some live albums that we feel might be the best representation of these particular bands or artists. So if there's some that we didn't get that you guys like, put them in the comments below. Again, there's no right or wrong answer here, but I think we can all agree there's some pretty sensational live albums that have been released in the history of rock and roll. So put them down in the comments below. I want to thank everybody here for coming up with some cool lists and sharing some Ronnie James Dio memories. That's what it's all about. So Ronnie, we miss you, baby.
Yep.
Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all
All the damn
the
time.
time. So for Lynn and Steve and Sydney and Butch and Ryan and Chris, I am Pete. Good night, everybody.
Good night.